Book 3, Chapter 5 of the Lancashire Witches. This recording is in the public domain. Reading by Andy Minter. The Lancashire Witches, a Romance of Pendle Forest, by William Harrison Ainsworth. Book 3, Houghton Tower. Chapter 5. The End of Malkin Tower. The shades of night had fallen on Downham Manor House, and with an aching heart and a strong presentiment of ill, Mistress Nutter prepared to quit the little chamber which had sheltered her for more than 2 months, and where she would willingly have breathed her last sigh, if it had been permitted her. Closing the Bible she had been reading, she placed the sacred volume under her arm, and taking up a small bundle containing her slender preparations for travel, extinguished the taper, and then descended by a secret staircase, passed through a door, fashioned externally like a cupboard, and entered a summer house, where she found old Crouch awaiting her. A few whispered words only passed between her and the huntsman, and informing her that the horses were in waiting at the back of the garden, he took the bundle from her, and would fain have relieved her also of the Bible, but she would not part with it, and pressing it more closely to her bosom, said she was quite ready to attend him. It was a beautiful starlit night, the air soft and balmy, and laden with the perfume of the flowers. A nightingale was singing plaintively in an adjoining tree, and presently came a response equally tender from another part of the grove. Mistress Nutter could not choose but listen, and the melody so touched her that she was half suffocated by repressed emotion, for, alas, the relief of tears was denied her. Motioning her somewhat impatiently to come on, Crouch struck into a sombre valley, edged by clipped yew trees, and terminating in a plantation, through which a winding path led to the foot of the hill whereon the mansion was situated. By daylight this was a beautiful walk, affording exquisite glimpses through the trees of the surrounding scenery, and commanding a noble view of Pendle Hill, the dominant point in the prospect. But even now, to the poor lady so long immured in her cell-like chamber, and deprived of many of nature's choicest blessings, it appeared delightful. The fresh air, redolent of new-mown hay, fanned her pale cheek and feverish brow, and allayed her agitation and excitement. The perfect stillness, broken only by the lowing of the cattle in the adjoining pastures, by the drowsy hum of the dorfly, or the rippling of the beck in the valley, further calmed her, and the soothing influence was completed by a contemplation of the serene heavens, wherein were seen the starry host, with the thin bright crescent of the new moon in the midst of them, diffusing a pearly light around her. One blot alone appeared in the otherwise smiling sky, and this was a great ugly black cloud, lowering over the summit of Pendle Hill. Mistress Nutter noticed the portentous cloud, and noticed also its shadow on the hill, which might have been cast by the fiend himself, so like was it to a demoniacal shape with outstretched wings. But, though shuddering at the idea it suggested, she would not suffer it to obtain possession of her mind, but resolutely fixed her attention on the other and more pleasing objects. By this time they had reached the foot of the hill, and a gate admitted them to a road running by the side of Downham Beck. Here they found the horses in charge of a man in the dark red livery of Nicholas Assheton, and who was no other than Tom Shaw, the rascally cockmaster. Delivering the bridles to Crouch, the knave hastily strode away, but he lingered at a little distance to see the lady mount, and then, leaping the hedge, struck through the plantation towards the hall, clinking the money in his pockets as he went, and thinking how cleverly he had earned it. But he did not go unpunished, for it is a satisfaction to record that in walking through the woods he was caught in a gin placed there by Crouch, which held him fast in its iron teeth till morning, when he was discovered by one of the under keepers, while going his rounds, in a deplorable condition, and lamed for life. Meanwhile, unconscious either of the manner in which she had been betrayed, or of the punishment awaiting her betrayer, Mistress Nutter followed her conductor in silence. For a while the road continued by the side of the brook, and then, quitting it, commenced a long and tedious ascent, running between high banks fringed with trees. The overhanging boughs rendered it so dark that Mistress Nutter could scarcely distinguish the old huntsman, though he was not many yards in advance of her; but she heard the tramp of his horse, and that was enough. All at once, where the boughs were thickest and the road darkest, she perceived a small fiery object on the bank, and in her alarm called out to the huntsman, who, looking back for a moment, laughed, and told her not to be uneasy, for it was only a glow worm. Ashamed of her idle fears, she rode on, but had not proceeded far, when, looking again at the bank, she saw it studded with the same lights. This time she did not call out or scream, but gazed steadily at the twinkling fires, hoping to get the better of her fears. Her alarm, however, rose to absolute terror, as she beheld the glow worms, if glow worms they were, twist together, and form themselves into a flaming brand, such as she had seen in her vision grasped by the angel who had driven her from the gates of Paradise. Averting her gaze, she would have hastened on, but a hand suddenly laid upon her bridle held back her horse, and she then perceived a tall, dark man, mounted on a sable steed, riding beside her. The supernatural character of the horseman was manifest, inasmuch as no sound was caused by the tread of his steed, nor did he appear to be visible to Crouch when the latter looked back. Mistress Nutter maintained her seat with difficulty. She well knew who was her companion. "So, Alice Nutter," said the horseman at length, in a low, deep tone, "you have chosen to shut yourself up in a narrow cell, like a recluse, for more than 2 months, denying yourself all sort of enjoyment, practising severest abstinence, and passing your whole time in useless prayer. Ay, useless, for if you were to pray from now till doomsday, come when it will, 1,000 years hence, or to morrow, it will not save you. When you signed that bond to my master, sentence was recorded against you, and no power can recall it. Why, then, these unavailing lamentations? Why utter prayers which are rejected, and supplications which are scorned? Shake off this weakness, Alice, and be yourself again. Once you had pride enough, and a little of it would now be of service to you. You would then see the folly of this abject conduct, humbling yourself to the dust only to be spurned, and suing for mercy only to be derided. Pray as loud and long as you will, the ears of heaven will remain ever deaf to you." "I hope otherwise," rejoined the lady, meekly. "Do not deceive yourself," replied the horseman. "The term granted you by your compact will not be abridged, but it is your own fault if it be not extended. Your daughter is destroying herself in the vain hope of saving you. Her prayers are as unavailing as your own, and recoil from the judgment throne unheard. The youth upon whom her affections is fixed is stricken with a deadly ailment. It is in your power to save them both." Mistress Nutter groaned deeply. "It is in your power, I say, to save them," continued the horseman, "by returning your allegiance to your master. He will forgive your disobedience if you prove yourself zealous in his service, will restore you to your former worldly position, avenge you of your enemies, and accomplish all you may desire with respect to your daughter." "He cannot do it," replied Mistress Nutter. "Cannot!" echoed the horseman. "Try him. For many years I have served you as familiar, and you have never set me the task I have failed to execute. I am ready to become your servant again, and to offer you a yet larger range of control. Put no limits to your desires or ambition. If you are tired of this narrow sphere, take a wider. Look abroad, but do not shut yourself up in a narrow cell, and persuade yourself you are accomplishing your ultimate deliverance, when you are only wasting precious time, which might be more advantageously and far more agreeably employed. While laughing at your folly, my master deplores it, and he has therefore sent me as to one for whom, notwithstanding all derelictions from duty, he has still a regard,
with an offer